How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Pei Zayin, Daf 87 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends, your friends. Okay, listen up. So today we wrap up the Agarta. We just had a few beautiful days of Agarta. We enjoyed ourselves. It was Be'etzim vacation, right? We went on vacation to a beautiful place for a few days, and now we're coming back to the shigra. We're coming back to the kind of regular stuff, which is also great. We love the shigra. We love the regular stuff. We love all of the Eibishter's Torah. We just had a few days of vacation. We enjoyed it very much, and now we're getting back to the Gemara. So we're going to get to a new Mishnah at the bottom of Pei Zayin Amud Aleph. Not particularly hard, Chevra, as I said. After learning Ezu Neshech, what's really hard, So it'll be fine. And although I don't want to jinx myself, I have no illusions that things can get very difficult in BavaMetzia. But anyways, okay. Here we go. We're going to start on Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis all the way at the bottom. So we're going to continue Be'etzim for the first Amud with this Agarta of Avram Avinu, okay? So Mashna Ligabe Avram Dichsiv Kein Taisa Kasha Dibatu Mashna Gabe Lo Dichsiv Vayivtzu Bam Me'od. Okay, how come by Avram Avinu the Malachim say, okay, Kein Taisa Kasha Dibatu Beseder, you want us to come, we'll come, Givaldik. But by Lot, Vayivtzu Bam Me'od, he had to mamish plead with them. He wouldn't let them. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Please, you gotta come. Please, how can you? Right, you gotta come. And finally they said, all right, we'll come. So Amr Belazar Mikanchi Misavim the Kohen ve Misavim the Gadol. So we see from here that you can kind of not refuse, but kindly decline, I guess, a Kohen, right? Lot, but not the Gadol, not Avram Avinu. Interesting. On the one hand, Avram says, all right, so he says to the Malachim, all right, don't go nowhere. Let me just grab a little bit of bread. I'll get up is for you. But you know what he says? Avram. He says he's going to get bread. He runs to the flock and he starts slaughtering and tonguing and all sorts of things. Omer Belazar says, we see from here that the righteous people, they say a little bit, they say, yeah, I'm just going to get you a little bread. But what they do is quite the contrary. They do quite a bit. And then the next thing you know, they're bringing delicacies, tongues in mustard. Who gets such delicacies? When's the last time you had tongue in mustard? A delicacy. However, on the contrary, the evil, they say a lot. We see that with our enemies today also. They like to talk and do psychological tricks. But anyways. They like to talk, but they don't do much. How do we know? From Ephron. Initially it says that when Avram went to purchase the Maris HaMachpelah to bury Sarah, Eretz Arba Meir Shekel Kesef Beini Uvein Chomahi. Right? Ephron originally says, what? Between old friends like us, come on, what's 400 shekels? Take the Myra, it's yours. You want to take it, don't worry about paying me. With Vesov Ksiv, Vayishma Avram el Ephron, and in the end, ultimately, of course, Avram did pay for the Maris HaMachpelah, and it says that Avram listened to Ephron, Vayishkol Avram leEphron es HaKesef Asher Diber Ba'ozni B'nei Ches, and Avram paid Ephron Arba Meir Shekel Kesef over La Socher, not just any 400 shekels, but shekels that were over La Socher. De lo shakil mine ela kantre de iko duchto de korle le tikla kantera. I think so. That goes with Tzionim Taka switches it around the kantera takla. That basically I guess you would go to different places. What would be a shekel in one place what they call a shekel in one place in another place that wouldn't be enough. Something that's actually a lot more expensive would be what they call a shekel. So Avram Avinu be'etzem paid Ephron like the lowest common denominator kind of shekel, right? Kilu, the type of shekel that no matter where you go and no matter how expensive the shekel denomination is in that place, these shekels that he gave Ephron would work. I.e., he paid top dollar for that myrrh. So we went from what's a few hundred shekels between good friends to not only are you paying in full, but you're going to pay. I want the type of shekels that no matter where I go, it will be accepted as a shekel. Whether the shekels in that place are very cheap or whether they're very expensive, I want the top most expensive payment method. Where am I? Ksiv kemach u'ksiv soles. On the one hand, the pasuk says kemach, which is coarse flour, and then it says soles, which is fine flour. Omer Bitzlok says Bitzlok mekan sha'ishet sarah eneh ba'orchim yosem min ha'ish. The drash is that Sarah said kemach, which is coarse flour. Avram says soles, which is fine flour. So we see from here that the wife is not as giving as the husband with the chonos sorchim. So she said kemach, he says solis. Ksiv lushi vasi ugis, and Avram Avinu says, knead the dough and make cookies and things, cakes. Uchsiv vayika chema v'cholav uven abakor. But then it says, what did Avram actually take? Butter, meat. V'lechem lo aisi l'kamaya. But he didn't actually end up bringing bread. What happened to the bread? Omer Ephraim akshoya Tamido shel Reb Meir Mishmei, Reb Meir Avram Avinu ochel chulin b'tayr hoya, that Avram Avinu was makpid that he would only eat chulin in a state of purity. V'sori menu also hayum persenida. And that day, right? It says that she had orech kanoshim, that she became a nida once again, and therefore the bread, even though it was chulin, it was tameh, and therefore Avram did not serve it. Vayomru Elav aye Sarah ishtecha, and the malachim say to Avram Avinu, where is Sarah your wife? Vayomer hine ba'oil. So Avram says, Allah, behold, she's in the tent. Lodia shesari menu tznua haisa, to let us know that Sarah Imenu was very tsanua, that she was sort of in the tent rather than out and about with the angels and the whole to do. The ministering angels knew that Sarah Imenu was in the tent. So what's pshat with asking and Avram saying, yeah, she's in the oil, so that she would be beloved upon her husband, that, to highlight the fact that she's so tsanua and great. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina Omar, Kidei l'shager la koishel broche. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina says it's so that he could give her the koishel broche, right? That they got the great news that there was going to be a yingul, and to share with her the koishel broche. I guess, I don't know, is that the koishel broche that right on the great news? I don't know, I feel like that's what I want to say, but maybe it's on, I don't know, maybe the benching. I don't know, it sounds like it's probably on the news. Right? This whole thing was all about the good news. Tani Mishum, do we make a kosher bracha on good news? I don't know, do we? I don't know, why not? Where are we? Tani Mishum, Rabbi Yasi, they taught from Rabbi Yasi, Lamunakud al ayoy she be'elav. Right, in the word, right, Vayomu elav, so it says there's punctuation on top of alid, yuvd, and vav. Lim the Torah derech eretz, that the Torah is teaching us derech eretz shishal adam b'achsanya shalo, that you should ask a fellow about how his wife is doing. So Tosfos, I think, points out something that I think Rashi says in the Chumash, which is that Ayo is like, how is he? I mean, they asked her about him. But anyways, I think what Rashi is saying here, I didn't quite understand it. I think what Rashi is saying here is that just the existence of the dots on these letters in the pasuk, I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding Rashi. I don't know, it's hard for me to understand what he was saying. But I think maybe what it's saying is that like the actual letters maybe aren't super significant, but the fact that there are dots on letters indicates that there is a drasha to be made from this word. And what is that drasha? That they asked him about Sarah, because Ayo seems to be male rather than female, right? So like Ayo wouldn't sound like asking about her, right? Meaning what Tosfos, apparently I actually didn't read Tosfos, the article said that Tosfos says this, but I think this is what Rashi says on the Chumash, is that they asked Sarah ve'ayo about him. That I think makes more sense. Why would they ask Avram about Sarah and refer to that as Ayo? So I think Rashi was maybe saying that like the existence of the dots on the letters of the word indicates that there's some drasha that should be made. What is that drasha? That drasha is that they ask him about how his wife's doing. I don't know. But I thought Shmuel says that we don't ask how a woman is doing. They buy the shani. Well, you could do it if it's through her husband. Sarah says, after I'm all like withered and wrinkled, I will now be all unwithered and unwrinkled. That after she got all withered and wrinkly, she then became unwithered and unwrinkly. And she became very, very beautiful once again. When Sarah is talking to the Eibishter, she says, how can we have a baby? Avram Avinu is, my husband is old. And yet when the Eibishter was relaying this to Avram Avinu, he didn't say that Sarah said that he, Avram, is old. Rather, he said that Va'ani Zakanti. She argued that she herself is old. The Eibishter, when relaying to Avram Avinu, did not relay it like Sarah had said, like she had said. Tanat Bishmael, they told him this message for Bishmael, Gadol Shalim she'afila Kadosh Baruch Hu Shinabo, that peace is so great, I guess Shalom Bayis is so great, that even the Eibishter made some tweaks in his relaying of the message. That Sarah had claimed that Avram is old. That in the Eibishter, when relaying it to Abraham, he says that Sarah had said that she herself is old. Right, he says that Sarah nursed Bonim, many boys. Kama Bonim Enika Sarah. How many boys was she nursing? I thought she only had Yitzchok. Reb Levi says, that on the day that Avram Avinu weaned Isaac, also Suda Gedola, he made Mamish a big Suda. How you call Umis Ha'olam Miranim Ve'omim, but all the nations of the world, they were, getting all excited, and all the news networks were broadcasting and giving Avram Avinu a hard time. They were saying, "Re'isem Zokin v'Zekena she'viu asufim and ashuk." Right? Have you seen this old couple that they came and they think that they're fooling us, and they brought and they remember asufis and badukis, and they scooped up some yingle from the market, and they're saying it's our yingle. We're not going to be fooled by that. And could you believe it? Not only that, and not only that, they're prancing around and making a whole big mishteh to kind of further their lie. So what did Avram Avinu do in order to repel this anti-Avram bias? Holach v'zimein kol gedolei ador. He went and he invited all the gedolei ador. V'sari menu zimna es nishoseim. And Sarah, our mother, invited all of their wives. V'chol achas v'achas hevia b'no ima. And each one of these, and every woman brought her yingle with her, but they did not bring their wet nurse. And a miracle happened with Sarah, our mother, and her breasts opened up like two streams, and there was enough milk for all of the babies. But the people, that was not enough proof for these people. They're always going to know how to put a spin on it. right? So first they were saying that Avram and Sarah picked up a baby from the shuk, and they're claiming that it's their baby. And then Sarah proves that no, actually it's my baby, and I could prove that that I'm producing milk, and that I can even milk all of these babies. But still, they put a spin on it, and they said, okay, fine. Im Sarah bas tishim shana teled. Right, and they went on all of the news programs, and they were making their arguments. Okay, fine. So maybe she gave birth, but Avram ben Meir shana yolid. Okay, maybe she gave birth at 90. Fine, but still, right? Avram Avinu he's 100 years old. Well, you really think that he had a baby? Right? That's the argument. Do you really think? They don't prove anything. They just try to make these arguments, right? Do you really think that somebody who was 100 years old is going to have a baby? You think that that's really true? Miyad nepach kalsei soponim shel Yitzchak v'nidme la'Avram, and then so then what happened was that the Eibishter changed the appearance of the face of Yitzchak to look identical to Abraham. Paslu kulam va'amru Avram oled Yitzchak, and then everybody said, okay, clearly Avram oled Yitzchak. That okay, it's Sarah's son, it's Abraham's son. I don't know. Was that enough to kind of convince them? Nah, probably not. But it does say Avram oled Yitzchak. It does say that they maybe eventually they have to accept that they're wrong. Ad Avram lo haya zikna, until Abraham there was no aging. There was no aging, Pashit. You would just, I don't know. So what? You would just look like a baby the whole time, or maybe like once you became an adult, you just kind of froze until you died. I don't know. I guess you didn't get all wrinkly and stuff. Avram lo haya zikna man dahava boy lemishtoi by the Avram mishtoi by the Yitzchak, and because originally there was no aging, so like I guess at some point Avram and Yitzchak just looked identical, and if you wanted to talk to Avram, you'd end up speaking to Yitzchak by the Yitzchak mishtoi by the Avram, and if you want to speak with Yitzchak, you'd end up speaking with Avram. Whatever, I don't remember what I just said, but Yitzchak, Avram, Yitzchak. Also Avram bar rachmei. So then Avram prayed to the Eibishter, and he says, look, this is very inconvenient that there's no aging. Like, aging, I guess, does serve a role of indicating who's the father and who's the son. And then there was aging. Shenem of Avram Zokin Babayomim. That Abraham was old, coming in his days. Ad Yaakov loy hava chulsha, until Jacob, there was no weakness. Like, you would just be like, doing your thing one day. You wouldn't like slow down or anything. You would just be like active, and then plop. So Yaakov bar rachmei. So Yaakov Avinu came and he prayed. He says, look, b'avachulsha, and then people got weak towards the end of the days. Meaning, so you have time to kind of wrap up in yonim, realize that you're getting weaker, slowing down, and you can kind of wind things down rather than just suddenly plop. Is it plop or is it ploop? And he said to Joseph that your father is sick. Okay, fine. Behold, your father is sick, and I guess that was the first time that somebody got sick. Until Elisha, there was never an instance of somebody getting sick and then getting healed. Also, Elisha barachmi ve'itpach. Elisha prayed and got healed. Shnei Amar, as the pasuk says, "Ve'Elisha chole eschol yo asher yomuz bo," that Elisha was sick with the sickness that he would end up dying from. Michal d'chole achrise, implying that there were other sicknesses that he sickened, but he didn't die from those, only from this one. Elisha was sick 3 times. One was that he forcefully sort of pushed away Gehazi after Gehazi was corrupt. And once after he sent the bears towards the babies. And then the final one that he died from, that Elisha died from the death that he would, Elisha sickened the sickness that he would die from, and that was the third of the sicknesses. Okay, now just a few lines until we get to the next Mishnah. Are they power washing? Yep. Big time. I hear it through the noise canceling headphones. But thank God for noise canceling headphones. They really help here. I hear it a little bit, but not enough to drive me nuts. Maybe it'll drive you nuts. But noise canceling headphones, Mom, has changed my life. I had to put them in this morning. The drunk people in the park making noise. Okay, look, it's shtickle b'diavad that I have to put in headphones in my own house, but in order to cancel the noise, it's so noisy. But it's about 10 times better now that I could at least have the tools to block it out. All right, weiter. That was my little shtickle about noise canceling headphones. Okay, so this goes back to our Mishnah with the story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Masya. Right, so it says, so he tells his Yingel, look, before they start doing their work, go and tell them, right, so go back and tell them that, look, we're not giving you Kesuda Shlema B'Shaitoi, rather we're giving you, a humble meal of bread and beans. Is it bean bread? Or pas vikidnis tanan, or is it bread and beans? No, you need a vav, ki mordaya de livros, like a paddle that you use in the Libros River or something. You need a vav, it's bread and beans, it's not bean bread. What's bean bread? Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, nah, look, everything is governed by whatever the local custom is. When we say everything is like the minhag of Medina, what's everything? That to include that which we learned in the Mishnah. If a person hires a worker, and he says that I will pay you like 1 or 2 of the people in the city. So if he says like 1 or 2 of the people, so meaning it could be the lowest of the paid people in the city, the lower wage. Rabbi Yoshua, that's Rabbi Yoshua's opinion, whereas the Chacham say that no, it would be basically the middle wage, the average wage would be what they would receive, what the poil would receive. All right, Chevre, and with that we wrap up the last few days of beautiful Agarata, and now we will get to a beautiful non-Agarata. Okay, so now we get to workers being able to eat on the job. We get to also about Trumas and Meisters. Interesting stuff. It's all interesting. It's the Eibishter's Torah. All right, says the Mishnah. Ve'elu ochlin min haTorah. Mida oraisa, these workers can eat while they're working, right? Because the pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? Kisava b'cher me'echa. I'm reading this outside. If you're working in your friend's vineyard, while you're working, while you're harvesting, you can eat grapes while you go. It's not like the grapes of wrath where they were forced to pick the fruit, but they couldn't take any of it, right? No, while you're harvesting, you can chaparan. So ve'elu ochlin, right? It says just don't take a whole bunch and like put it in your bag and take it home for your family. No, that you can't do. While you're on the job, you can eat. So ve'elu ochlim min haTorah, these people, right? This you can eat, right? These workers can eat while they are on the job. So if somebody is like harvesting, I don't know, maybe he's harvesting figs or something, so he can eat. He can eat one for me, one for you. Uvitalush min hakarka, and if we're talking about produce that is already harvested, and now you're like on the next stages of processing, achlo nigma malachto, so long as it is not yet ready for meiser, right? Whatever the final step is for meiser, whether it's putting it into a pile, whether it's bringing it into the house, that's already going to be more of tomorrow's discussion. But so long as it is not yet chayiv and meiser, you can still kind of take as you eat it. And this is all talking about things that grow from the ground. Now, in the following scenario, however, you cannot eat, even if you're working the ground. Right, we said that if something's connected to the ground, you can eat from it at the Shas Gemar Melach if you're harvesting it, be'etzim. Right, you have a fig tree, let's say, and you're figging the tree to remove the figs. So then you can eat at that stage. But if you have, as Rashi says, kigona menachesh b'bitzalim, if you're like weeding or hoeing or something around onions while they're still growing, you can't eat them when they're not yet, being harvested. Uvitalish min akarka, what do we do? These are the things that are not allowed, right? Be'elu she'ein ochlin. I backed up a few words. As well as if it's already been separated from the ground. Right, once it's already chayiv in meiser, then you can't eat. Then it's tevel. You can't eat it anymore. And also things that don't grow from the ground. So I don't know if you like processing meat. I guess I don't know. Maybe you like in like a chicken plant. So you can't. I guess eat while you're chickening the chickens. I guess. Okay. Oh, what does Rashi say? Like if you're milking or something, or making cheese. Things like that, you wouldn't be able to chop for yourself during those activities. Minani Frag the Gemara, how do I know that a person who is like harvesting figs can eat figs while he's doing that? Right? One for me, one for you. That you will go into your friend's vineyard, and we're going to see later on today's daf that's talking about a worker at the time of harvesting. When you go into your friend's vineyard, and you can eat while you're working, while you're harvesting. Okay, fine. So you can eat while you're harvesting the grapes of a vineyard. How do I know anything other than a vineyard? Well, binyanav, let's learn it from Kerem. Ma Kerem miyuchid, Dovish Gidule Karka, Uvishaz Gemar Melocha, Poyel Oichel Boy. That a vineyard. Let's take a look. Well, what's a vineyard? A vineyard is it's something that's where am I? I keep on losing the place. Ma Kerem miyuchid, Dovish Gidule Karka. It grows from the ground, like grapes grow from the ground. And while you're harvesting it, the harvester can eat from the grapes. Also anything that grows from the ground, like a fig. When you are harvesting it, so the harvester can eat from it. But wait, hold your horses. How do you know that we can learn out other things like figs, for example, from a kerem, from a vineyard? Vineyard is kind of, in its own kind of league of its own, in that it is chayav in olalos, right? The owner of a vineyard, if you have unripe grapes, you have to leave those for the poor people. So maybe they're also, the owner has to allow the worker to eat from the grapes as he's harvesting as well. But maybe other, figs where there's no concept of olalos, so then there also wouldn't necessarily be a concept of allowing the workers to chaparine from their work, from the harvesting. So gamrin on mikama. Fine. So let's learn it out from kama. Let's learn it out from. Right. We have another pasuk, as we're going to see in a second. But by kama, by like grain and stuff, oichit, it says that the people can eat while they are harvesting. And then let's learn it out from there, for other things like figs. Kama gufa minolin. How do we know that by grain, the same would apply, that the harvester can chap arayin? I don't know if would you eat like raw grain? I don't know. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, kisove b'kamas re'echa v'katafta mililos biyodecha. That when you go into your friend's, field, so grain field, so you can chap arayin some grains. Okay, so let's say that just like over there you can chap arayin, so also by other things, for example, figs or dates, whatever it might be, you can also chap arayin while you're harvesting. But ma'ali kama sheken chayevez b'chala. But one second, grain is unique in that the chamesh is minei dog, and you have to separate challah from doughs. You don't have such a concept by things like figs. So maybe the requirement to allow the worker to eat during the harvest is unique to grains, but cannot be applied globally. Wait, but how do we know though that when it says kama, it's specifically referring to grains? How do we know that it's specifically referring to things that would have a chiyuv chala? Dilma, kol kama ka'ama rachmana. Maybe it means just anything that stands on the ground. That's right there. For example, a fig tree can also be considered kama. Well, asya kama, because we have a gzer shava of kama. Ksiv acha kisava b'kama sriyecha. It says over here, by the workers harvesting a field, it says b'kamas re'echo. Chsiv hasam, it says by Sfiras ha'omer. It's currently Sfiras ha'omer right now. Mehechel chermesh b'kama, when the sickle begins to harvest the kama. And that's of course barley. So ma'hasam kama d'mechayv b'chala. So just like by the korban omer, which is barley, it's something that would be chayev as b'chala. Af hachos nami. So also by a worker being able to eat during the harvest is kama d'michayva b'chala. We're specifically talking about kama that would be chayev as b'chala. So ika lemifrach malakamishkin chayev as b'chala. So as we said, we can ask that we can't learn out, let's say, figs from kama, because kama is something that would be chayavis in chala, and there, right? And we can only learn out things that would be chayavis in chala. We can't necessarily include figs. Karim yochiach. Okay, so why don't we go back to try to learn once again from the vineyard? But we said the vineyard is unique. Malikim shkin chayav ba'olados. We can't learn out from the vineyard because the vineyard has its own specific halachis of olados. So kama tochiach. Okay, fine. So then can't we learn out from kama? But we said, yeah, but kama has chala. V'chazer adin. And we say, yeah, but you can't use kama either. So we're playing ping pong over here. We're going to Kerem. We say, but olalos. So we say, okay, let's go to kama. Chala. Okay, so can we go back to Kerem? Olalos. What about kama? Chala. Loriza, kirizev, loriza, kirizev. Look, each one has its own unique circumstance. But the common denominator, the common thread between kama and Kerem, hatzara shovish sheboyen, shekain, davar shegidule, karka, uvishas, gmar melacha, poel oichel boy. Both kerem and kama are things that grow from the ground, and when the worker is harvesting them, he can chap arayin. So af kol davar shegidule karka. So also anything that grows from the ground. Oh man. B'shas gmar melacha, poel oichel bo. So also anything that grows from the ground, even like figs and dates, whatever it might be. B'shas gmar melacha poel oichel bo. During the harvest, the harvester can chap arayin. Malatzad shava sheboyin sheken yesh boyin tzad mizbeach. So the Gemara says, wait, but still, I'm not convinced that we can learn out something like dates or figs from grapes and grain. Because both grapes and grain have a tzad mizbeach. Right? Grapes for the wine libations, grain for the flour that they would use in the korban mincha. So they both have a tzad mizbeach. How would I know though that dates and figs that don't go on the mizbeach, that the worker would be able to eat during the harvest? And then the Gemara, I guess like kind of parenthetically says, Vasa zayis, these beit tzad mizbeach. We say, well, and then we can also throw into the mix olives, because oil goes on the mizbeach. in the korban menachos. But v'zayis b'ma'atzad osi, what do you mean? You don't need to include an olive because it is goes in the mizbeach. We already know an olive hu gufe kerem ikre. I mean, we already know that olives would be included in the sort of allowance for the workers to eat during the harvest, because olives are also called a kerem, and we already know about kerem. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, "Vayivar migodesh vad koma vad kerem zayis." We've seen the pasuk says kerem zayis. So olives are already considered a kerem, a vineyard, and we already know that workers can eat in a vineyard when they're harvesting. So the same would apply already to olives. So we don't necessarily need to learn it out from the fact that it also goes in the mizbeach. Amar Papa says, "Papa kerem zayis ikre." Kerem stamalo ikre, say, well, no, by olives we would specifically call it kerem zayis. That's different than a plain kerem. A kerem plain, like we see over here by the workers eating during the harvest, is a vineyard, is for grapes, and therefore an olive wouldn't necessarily be included in kerem plain old kerem like we see in the pasuk. But we would include olives over here because yes, olive oil would go on the mizbeach. But we say, okay, fine, done with that sort of somewhat parenthetical thing. Mikol makom kasha. No, back to our original plan, program. We have a question. The question is, how do we know to include other things like figs and dates? All we know is basically things that can go on the mizbeach, a worker can eat during the harvest. El Amar Shmuel, rather says Shmuel, Amar Kol, the pasuk says v'chermesh, a sickle. The rabbis call ba'alei chermesh to include all things that you would harvest with a sickle, even if they are not grain or grapes. Alright, by chermesh miboile b'shas chermesh echol shelo b'shas chermesh lo seichol. But we say, wait, but don't we need chermesh to say that you can only eat at the time of the sickling, but not later on? No. Ahu mivel kelicha lo sitein nafka. No, that's learning out from don't put it into your container, right? If it says vel kelicha lo sitein, don't put it into your container for later. You can only eat while you're working, but not later on. Okay, fine. So we're saying that chermesh can come and include all things that are sickled. Tenach debar chermesh, telav bar chermesh minolan. Okay, but that makes sense for things that are sickled. What about things that are not sickled? For example, dates and figs. You don't sickle those. I think I'm not a farmer, but I imagine if you go to pick dates or figs, you're not going to bring a sickle. Maybe I don't know how do you harvest dates and figs. However you do them. But how would we include those, right? Things that aren't sickled. Elo Amar Yitzchak, rather Yitzchak Amakra Kama. That when the pasuk says Kama, lirabos kol baile Kama. That when it says Kama is actually coming to include all things that grow from the ground, even things like figs and dates. Va'amar Kama dimichayva b'chala. But I thought we had learned to Gzeira Shava to say that kama is specifically, we're learning out from the Omer to say that it's things that are specifically chayv and chala. Hanimile mikamedinei say chermesh. Well, that was before we had the limud from chermesh to say that all things that are sickled, the worker can eat during harvest. So ashad asi chermesh. So now once already we're kind of opening up the definition to all things that are sickled. Is Rabbi le kol debar chermesh? Wait, what? This is chermesh. Hashad asi chermesh. Is Rabbi le kol debar chermesh? V'avagav delo michayev b'chala. Once already we have the word sickle to say all things that are sickled the worker can eat while he's harvesting, even if these are things that are not chayev and chala. So I don't know, maybe like what's an example of a grain that isn't chayev and chala? Maybe rice. Do you sickle rice? Maybe. So maybe like rice or something. If you're sickling rice, and rice is not one of the chameshes minei dagon, so then maybe you'd be able to like eat it while you're harvesting or something. So kama lamali. So why do I need kama? The rabbis call by le kama. It's then coming to include all things that kind of grow from the ground, including things like dates and figs. Okay, so now that we're learning out that by all things the harvester can eat during harvest, we learn out from chermesh, we learn out from kama, which is the same pasuk, right? So kisave b'cherem reyecha lamali. So then why do I need this pasuk then of kisave b'cherem reyecha, right? Right. Initially we had hoped to learn out these halachis of the worker eating from during the harvest from this pasuk by a vineyard. We ultimately said no, we learned it out from a different pasuk, the pasuk by kama. So then why do I then need the pasuk of kerem? Well, Amar Rava says Rava the ilchosa, because there's other halachis that we learn out from that pasuk. Kedetanis we learn the brayso kisavoy, when it says kitavo, right? Kisavo b'cherem reyecha, nemer kan bia v'nemer lahalon loisavoy olav hashemesh. It says by paying a worker that you, right, biyomu titein scharo, that you got to pay him that day, lo savay olav hashemesh, that the sun should not set. Malahalim b'foil akasim bedaber, just like when it says bia, it's talking about a worker. So afkan b'foil akasim bedaber. That's how we know that here also by kisavi b'cherem reyecha. How do we know that it's talking about a worker? Maybe she's talking about if you're spatziring in somebody's vineyard. So no, it's not talking about a worker, because we learn out this gezer shav of bia. B'cherem reyecha, when it says that in your friend's vineyard, so it says bechel yicha lositein, right? They can eat it while you're on the job, you can't take home for later. But that only applies to your friend v'lo b'kerem kusi, not in the vineyard of a kusi. By the vineyard of a kusi, you can even take it for later. You can even take it from later. Anichalamanda Omar Gezel Kusi Aser. So I understand if you say that you're not allowed to steal from a kusi. So I know this to call the mishrei poil. That's why we need the pasuk to say that even though you're not allowed to steal from a kusi, you are, however, allowed to take home some of the harvest for later from his field if you're harvesting his field. Elamanda Amar Gezel Kusi Mutter. But if you say that you're even allowed to steal from a kusi, that the Isser of Gezel doesn't apply to a kusi, as we learned in Masechta Bava Kama, Hashta Gezelo Mutter, if you could push it, rob him, Poyol Mibaya, a person who's working the land to be able to take some stuff home for later, and obviously he would be able to do that, so what do I need the pasuk for? Mukim la b'cherem reyecha v'lo shel hektish. That, no, fakir, it's talking about b'kerem reyecha, that when it says that you're allowed to eat from it, that's only if it's your friend's field, but not if it's a friend, but not if it's a field of hektish, then you would not be able to eat while you're harvesting. V'chalto v'lo motzet, you eat it, but don't just suck out the wine and like throw away the rest of it. Anovim v'lo anovim v'davar acher, grapes alone, but you can't like add salt to it and like make them more delicious so you can eat lots of them. No, you can, if you want a grape, eat a grape. That's it. Don't start doing fancy stuff so you develop quite an appetite. That just like the balabayis, so too is the worker. Manafshecha oichel ufater. Just like the balabayis can eat during the harvest, and you'd be potter from truma and meiser because it's not yet chayiv and truma and meiser. Afnafshecha poil oichel ufater. So also the worker can eat while he's harvesting, and there's not yet a chiyuv of meiser. So echa v'lo achila gasa, to satisfy you, but don't overdo it. Vel kel yicha lo sitein. And it says, don't place it in your vessel. B'shasha ata nosin the kelyo shabalabayis ata oichel, u'b'shasha I ata nosin the kelyo shabalabayis I ata oichel. That davka we're talking about at the time of harvest. That at the time of harvest, when you're harvesting things and putting it in the balabayis' vessels, so that is when you can chaparan a shtickle, but not at any other point, not later on, not beforehand. Okay, fine. Alright friends, that was daf Pei Zayin of Masechta BavaMetzia, another amazing daf in this amazing Masechta. We wrapped up our little vacation and we got back to the Shigra, and we've been learning about workers being able to eat from the harvest, and tomorrow we'll continue on the sugya and learn about Meiser and at what point are things chayiv in Meiser. So very gewaldige stuff in the Eibishter's Torah. Have a good one. Peace out.